So far, all the SQL Server code we've executed has been executed as a batch, meaning that I select a few lines of code and either press F5 or hit execute. The selected code is submitted as a batch to SQL Server and then executed. But it's possible to take those batches and save them inside of SQL Server, so they can just be called using a stored procedure name. Open this up and give us some more room. Stored procedures, sometimes informally referred to as sprocs, are created using the DDL command create procedure. So in this example, it's create procedure, and here's the name of the procedure as, then all the code of the procedure follows. So while this select command could be executed by highlighting it and just executing, it's also possible to take that same code and save it with a name attached. So we then have a saved batch we can call anytime we call that name. Some sprocs, or stored procedures, actually end up becoming very complex and long with hundreds or thousands of lines of code. And by maintaining that code inside of SQL Server, instead of in multiple different client applications, it adds to the stability and performance of the database. So let's create the procedure. And it's important to note that we did not execute the stored procedure at this time. We simply executed the create procedure and then saved that in the database. So it's called category list. Let's jump over to opening Object Explorer just to show you it was created. Under the OBX Kites database, programmability, stored procedures, there's category list. If we say script procedure as alter to new query window, you'll see there's the code. And close this query editor, close Object Explorer. The create procedure simply takes the stored procedure and saves it as text inside of SQL Server. It's not yet compiled. There's no query execution plan for it. The first time it's compiled, now SQL Server makes a query execution plan and we compile it. And there's two ways to execute a stored procedure. We can say execute stored procedure or just send the name of the stored procedure in a batch all by itself. So when we execute the stored procedure, SQL Server pulls up that entire batch, compiles it, generates a query execution plan, and executes it. Then the next time we go ahead and execute it, it can reuse that query execution plan. If you want to execute a stored procedure that's on another machine, just how we did the distributed queries, you can also do, I guess you could call it distributed stored procedures or remote stored procedures, by using the complete four-part name to call a stored procedure. So here we're saying execute. Here is the name of the second instance on this particular box. There is the database, schema, and a stored procedure out there that has two parameters being passed to it. So we can execute this, and it goes out there and executes it. This stored procedure doesn't actually return anything. It just accepts the food and the eatables and stores it in the database. It's possible to force a stored procedure to recompile every time it's executed. And you can do this using the with recompile option, as we're doing in this stored procedure. And you'll probably want to use the with recompile when the stored procedure will often be using different types of parameters, typically going from a very narrow parameter to a very broad, wide parameter, looking at the data. Because those are going to be the cases where the query execution plans for the first time it's executed will likely not be the best execution plan for a future time it's executed. If the sproc typically runs with the same type of data as far as the scope or the size of the data, then don't use the with recompile so you can gain the benefits of reusing the compiled query execution plan. For example, if you're always passing to it one customer ID and returning back a listing of the orders, then that one customer ID is a single narrow slice of the data, and the same compile will work every time. You can also force a recompile by using the SP recompile category list. And what this does is that it marks the stored procedure so the next time it's executed, it'll end up being recompiled.